It was one of those afternoons when the sun seemed tired, hanging low and unsure if it wanted to shine or fade. The air was heavy, still, as Evelyn Carter, a black elderly woman in her late 60s, stepped out of the cab holding a small grocery bag. She had a warm rotisserie chicken wrapped in plastic, a loaf of bread, and 2 cans of beans. Her blue cardigan smelled faintly of lavender. Her shoes were old but clean, and her heart felt light because she was going home, to the house she had lived in for more than 20 years, the house where she had raised her adopted son, Ryan. She reached the front door, balancing her bag on one arm, fishing for her keys, humming softly to herself, but the key didn't fit. She frowned, tried again, twisted it gently, then harder, but it wouldn't turn. Her heart gave a small jolt. She flipped it upside down, tried again, her fingers trembling slightly. Then she stopped, staring at the lock. It was new. Someone had changed it. She knocked once, twice, then louder, calling out, "Ryan? Honey? Are you there?" The door opened only a crack and Ryan's girlfriend, Natalie, peeked through, her tone casual. "Oh, hey, Miss Evelyn, you weren't supposed to be back yet." Evelyn's brows furrowed. "Why can't I open the door, dear?" Natalie bit her lip, glancing over her shoulder. Ryan was going to talk to you about that." Evelyn's heart sank. "Talk to me about what?" Natalie sighed, stepping out and closing the door behind her. "You don't live here anymore." The words hit like a slap, sharp and cold. Evelyn blinked, gripping her grocery bag tighter. "What did you say?" Natalie forced a smile. "Ryan said you already signed the transfer papers. Remember those forms a few weeks ago at the kitchen table? It's all done. He just forgot to tell you it's official." Evelyn's breath caught, her hands trembled. The memory rushed back, the papers Ryan had brought, saying it was just for taxes, for protection. She had trusted him completely. The boy she had raised from 2 years old, the one she had loved more than her own life. And now her signature had been her undoing. Natalie slipped back inside, murmuring something about calling Ryan. The door shut, the lock clicked, and Evelyn stood there for a long time, her grocery bag heavy, her chest aching. She didn't knock again. She didn't cry. She just walked slowly down the porch steps, past the flowers she had planted last spring, her knees weak but her spine straight. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay. The world felt smaller that evening, the sky darker, the wind colder. She walked until her legs burned, then sat on a bus stop bench, the chicken still warm beside her. People passed without looking twice, just another old woman with groceries. But inside her, a storm was building, not of anger, but of heartbreak, betrayal, disbelief. She had given that boy everything: food, love, education, a home, her prayers, her nights of worry, and he had taken it all, even the roof above her head. As night fell, she found herself sitting in her car 2 blocks away, staring at the dark windows of her old house, her heart too tired to cry. She remembered the nights she stayed up when Ryan was sick, the mornings she packed his lunch, the days she stood in line at school meetings while other mothers whispered, "That's the black woman raising the white kid," and how she smiled anyway, because love didn't need to match colors, it only needed to be real. But now love had turned into silence, and silence had turned into pain. She stared at the dashboard clock, the seconds ticking louder than her heartbeat. She whispered softly to herself, "Lord, give me strength," her voice shaking but steady. And in that small car, under the dim streetlight, Evelyn decided, something. She might have lost her home, but she hadn't lost her worth. Her son may have changed the locks, but he couldn't lock her out of her destiny. He didn't know what she carried, not in her bag but in her soul, and not in her wallet but in her past. Tomorrow she would go to the bank, and Ryan would soon learn that the woman he cast aside was not a helpless mother, but a woman who had once fought the world and won. And this time, she wouldn't fight for his love. She would fight for her dignity, her name, and the quiet justice that always finds those who forget where they came from. The next morning, sunlight broke through the motel curtains like reluctant forgiveness. Evelyn sat at the small wooden table, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup. Her reflection stared back from the dusty mirror. Tired eyes, silver hair tied in a loose bun, and a heart still beating beneath years of disappointment. She hadn't slept much, only drifted between memories and regrets. Her body was sore, but her mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in years. She whispered softly, "You raised a man, not a monster," though her trembling hand said otherwise. She pulled out her worn leather notebook, the one she'd carried for decades, its pages full of prayers, hospital schedules, grocery lists, and small notes from a simpler time. But at the very back, under a folded church flyer, was what she needed: a list of bank accounts, all under her maiden name, untouchable, unseen, unnoticed. That $9.5 million Ryan never knew existed, a secret she had kept locked away since Leonard's death, not out of greed, but out of wisdom. She always believed that real wealth was safety, not pride. Her husband Leonard used to say, "The Lord gives you two eyes, one to look out for others, and one to look out for yourself." And now she was finally ready to use the second one. She grabbed her purse, walked out the door, and headed toward the nearest branch of Meridian Trust Bank, her old nursing badge still tucked inside, even though she had retired years ago. "The tea is full, Cindy." Eller smiled politely as Evelyn approached. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" Evelyn smiled back, calm and measured. "I'd like to check on a few of my accounts." She handed over her ID, her voice steady but low. Inside, her thoughts raced. She had never touched the settlement money since it was transferred. She had let it grow quietly, the way she grew flowers, patiently, with prayer, and now it was time to bloom. When the teller's eyes widened at the screen, Evelyn almost chuckled. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked kindly. The young woman nodded nervously. "Yes, ma'am, everything is in order." Evelyn smiled faintly, took her balance slip, folded it neatly into her notebook, and walked out with a grace that could only come from someone who had already lost everything, and yet still stood tall. As she stepped outside, the autumn wind brushed her cheeks, and she whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for reminding me who I am." That afternoon she sat in a nearby park, pigeons fluttering around, children laughing in the distance. She thought about Ryan, about the little boy who used to draw her pictures of Supermom with crayon hearts. She thought about his asthma attacks, how she'd hold him through the night whispering, "Breathe, baby, breathe." And she wondered when his love had turned into greed, when her sacrifices had become invisible to him. But she didn't let bitterness stay long. She was not built for hate. She was built for redemption. She decided that she wouldn't go after Ryan with anger or lawyers. No, that wasn't her way. She would teach him the lesson he refused to learn, the value of love over luxury, of integrity over inheritance. She had raised him with faith, and though he had lost his way, she still believed that truth finds a way to return home, even through pain. Evelyn spent the next few days planning. She called an old friend, Pastor Mishi, from her church, a man who had known her since her nursing days. When she told him what happened, he fell silent, then said softly, "Evelyn, the Lord don't sleep, and neither does justice," she smiled. "I'm not looking for revenge, Pastor, I'm looking for peace." He promised to help her find a small apartment near the church, away from the noise, and she agreed. "Just something simple," she said. "I've had enough of fancy roofs and false love." Meanwhile, in the house she once called home, Ryan and Natalie celebrated their new beginning. They redecorated, sold furniture, and talked about investing. Natalie convinced him to put the property up for sale. "It's too small, Ryan. We can get double in Dallas." And he nodded, proud, believing he had finally moved up, blind to the storm that would one day bring him down. Back in her new apartment, Evelyn opened her notebook again, and on a fresh page she wrote in careful letters, "Do not let anger lead you. Let purpose guide you." Beneath it, she added a list of things to do: find a lawyer she could trust, update her will, and most importantly, set up the Evelyn Carter Foundation for Children Without Families, because she had once been a mother to a child no one wanted, and she would be that again, but this time for many. As night settled, she looked out her small window. The city lights twinkled like distant blessings. She folded her hands and prayed, "Lord, you took me from the storm. Now make me the calm for others." And somewhere deep inside, she knew her story wasn't ending. It was just changing direction. For every door that closes, God builds another, and Evelyn Carter was ready to walk through hers. Weeks passed quietly, the kind of peace that felt earned, not given. Evelyn woke early every morning, brewed her coffee, and sat by the window watching the world move on. She was no longer angry, just awake in a new way. Her life felt smaller now but freer. No walls of guilt, no footsteps echoing down her old hallway, just the sound of birds, her prayers, and a steady heartbeat reminding her she was still here, still strong, still chosen. She had been thrown out but not broken, because grace doesn't live in a house, it lives in a heart. Her days filled with purpose again. She volunteered at the local community center, helping underprivileged children with reading and school meals. The director, a young woman named Tasha, adored her. "Miss Evelyn, these kids light up when you walk in," she'd say, and Evelyn would smile. "That's because I see them, baby, and that's all any child needs." Those afternoons healed her piece by piece. The laughter of children was her medicine, and she poured her heart into every one of them, quietly becoming a grandmother figure to kids who had none. One day she met a boy named Jordan, 7 years old, shy, thin, with eyes too sad for his age. She recognized that look instantly. It was the same one Ryan had when she first held him, the same fear of being unwanted. She knelt down and said softly, "You hungry, sweetheart?" He nodded, barely whispering, "Yes, ma'am." She fixed him a plate and sat beside him, watching as he ate slowly. She felt her heart tighten, not in pain, but in purpose. She knew in that moment what God was telling her to do. This was her calling, reborn. That night, Evelyn opened her notebook again and wrote at the top, "The Evelyn Carter Foundation." She planned every detail: scholarships for foster kids, housing support for single mothers, educational aid. She didn't want recognition, only results. She reached out to Pastor Michael, who helped her contact a trustworthy lawyer, Mr. Gaines, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes who had known her late husband. When she told him her story, he shook his head. "You've got more courage than most millionaires I know." Evelyn smiled faintly. "That's because my wealth ain't in money, it's in meaning." Together they drew up legal documents to seed her assets, set up the foundation, and secure the funds for long-term community impact. Everything was clean, private, and in her control. She wanted no headlines, just hope. While signing papers, she remembered the day Ryan had fooled her into signing away her house. This time, her hand didn't tremble, her eyes didn't doubt. She was reclaiming her story, page by page, signature by signature. Meanwhile, Ryan was struggling. The house he thought would make him rich had become an anchor. The market wasn't what he expected. Natalie had grown impatient, bills piled up, and the investment deals he bragged about were falling apart. She started blaming him, calling him lazy, irresponsible, ungrateful. Their arguments got louder. Neighbors began to notice. One evening, she threw a glass against the wall and shouted, "You took your mama's house and still can't make anything of it." The words hit him harder than the shattering glass, but he said nothing. He just sat there, face buried in his hands, for the first time realizing he might have traded his soul for a house he could never call a home. Back in her small apartment, Evelyn was preparing to host a small community dinner, her first official event under her foundation's name. Nothing fancy, just warm food, music, and laughter. When she stood before the gathered families, her eyes shimmered. "I don't have much to say," she began softly, "except that no child deserves to feel unwanted. No mother should sleep hungry, and no heart should lose hope." The audience clapped, some with tears. She smiled humbly. "If we can feed one, teach one, love one, then we've done enough." After the event, a local journalist approached her, curious about her story. "Miss Carter, people are saying you used to be a nurse and now you're running a foundation. How did that happen?" Evelyn looked down, smiled, and said, "Sometimes life breaks you to show others how to heal." And that single quote became the headline in the next week's newspaper, quietly spreading across the town, inspiring dozens to volunteer, donate, and reach out. One evening, as she locked up the center, she saw Jordan waiting by the door, holding a small handmade card. "Thank you, Miss Evelyn," he said, handing it to her. She opened it and saw crayon drawings of hearts and the words, "You're my angel." Her eyes welled with tears. She hugged him gently, whispering, "No, baby, I'm just someone God didn't forget." She didn't know that someone else had seen that moment. One of Ryan's old college friends, who had volunteered at the center that week, recognized her and snapped a photo for social media with the caption, "This woman lost her home but built a legacy." Within days, the post went viral. Evelyn's story reached thousands of people, and eventually it landed right on Ryan's phone screen. He froze, staring at his mother's smiling face beside the words, founder and hero. Guilt hit him like thunder, and for the first time in years he felt small, really small. He whispered, "Mama?" To the empty room, realizing too late that while he was chasing wealth, she was creating worth. Ryan sat alone in the dark, the glow of his phone screen reflecting off the empty wine glass beside him, his mother's picture still open on the viral post, her smile soft and radiant, surrounded by children. The caption burned into his mind. This woman lost her home, but built a legacy. He scrolled through the comments, hundreds of strangers praising her strength, her kindness, her faith, calling her a saint in plain clothes. Every word felt like a blade, cutting through the illusion of success he had built. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding, whispering under his breath, "What have I done?" Natalie walked in, her arms crossed, her tone sharp. "You still looking at that? Ryan, you're obsessed. You gave her everything she needed. She's fine." He looked up slowly, his eyes hollow. "I took everything she had, Nat. I didn't give her anything." She scoffed. "Oh, please, she's famous now. She's fine without you." But her words didn't land the way she hoped. Ryan stood, voice low but trembling. "You don't get it. She raised me when no one wanted me. She worked double shifts, stayed up nights, gave me love she never got back, and I threw her out like trash." Natalie rolled her eyes. "Ryan, stop being dramatic. You said she signed the papers willingly." He shook his head, pacing. "She trusted me. That's worse. I told her it was for taxes. She believed me." His voice cracked, and for the first time in years, the confident, ambitious man looked like a lost child again. Natalie sighed. "Look, guilt doesn't pay bills. You better figure out the mortgage because I'm done living like this." She grabbed her purse and left, the door slamming behind her, leaving Ryan in silence. He sank to the floor, tears stinging his eyes, memories flashing in fragments. The night she stayed by his hospital bed when he was 5, whispering prayers while machines beeped. The day he brought home his first bad report card, expecting punishment but getting hugs instead. The time she worked overtime to buy him a guitar he never learned to play. He had taken it all for granted. He had mistaken love for weakness. Now, the truth sat heavy on his chest, crushing. The next morning, Ryan drove aimlessly through town until he found the small community center he had seen in the photo. He parked across the street, watching from inside the car. There she was, his mother, wearing her soft blue cardigan, smiling as she handed out food to families in line. Her movements were slower now, but her energy glowed with peace, her laughter genuine, her spirit unbroken. Ryan felt something shift inside him, shame mixing with awe. He wanted to run to her, to beg forgiveness, but cowardice held him still. He came back again the next day and the next. Each time he parked at a distance, watching silently as Evelyn worked, teaching children, hugging mothers, talking with volunteers. He wanted to believe she did, and hate him, that maybe somewhere deep down she still prayed for him. But every time he tried to step out of the car, his guilt dragged him back. One evening, Pastor Michael noticed the parked car. When he walked closer, he saw Ryan sitting inside, staring at the center. He tapped on the window gently. "You planning on coming in, son?" Ryan jumped, embarrassed, wiping his eyes. I don't think she wants to see me." The pastor smiled softly. "A mother's heart doesn't close that easy. She's forgiven you already. The only one holding back is you." Ryan swallowed hard. "I don't deserve her forgiveness." The pastor nodded. "None of us deserve grace, yet God gives it anyway. Go to her, son. Don't wait until it's too late." The next morning, Ryan finally gathered courage. He walked up to the community center, heart pounding, palms sweating. Inside, children laughed, volunteers moved around, and in the corner he saw her, his mother, placing bowls on a table. She looked smaller somehow, but radiant. The kind of beauty that comes from peace, not pride. He took a shaky breath and whispered, "Mama." She froze, turning slowly. Their eyes met. Time stopped. Ryan looked older, tired, broken. But beneath the guilt, she saw the same little boy she once held in her arms. Ryan, she said softly, her voice trembling. He stepped forward, tears streaming down. I'm sorry, Mama. I was blind, stupid, greedy. You gave me everything and I took it all for myself. He fell to his knees sobbing, please, please, forgive me. Evelyn placed her trembling hands on his shoulders, her own eyes wet. Child, I forgave you before you ever asked. You were lost, but now you're found. She lifted his chin gently. The world will teach you how to take, but love will always teach you how to give. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, surrounded by silence, broken only by the distance and laughter of children. When she finally spoke again, her words were soft but strong. I don't need you to fix what's broken, Ryan. Just don't forget what's real anymore. That night, for the first time in years, Ryan slept peacefully. He had nothing left, no money, no house, no partner, but he had something greater, a chance at redemption, a chance to make things right. And as for Evelyn, she finally felt her purpose complete. She hadn't just lost a son, she had helped him find himself again. Days passed like soft waves, calm but filled with new beginnings. Ryan began coming to the community center every morning, at first quietly, sweeping floors, arranging boxes, doing small tasks without being asked. He didn't want praise, he only wanted to earn his place back, to feel worthy again. The volunteers were surprised to see him, but Evelyn said nothing. She simply let him stay. Her silence wasn't cold, it was patient, like the way sunlight returns after a storm, slowly, gently, without asking for permission. One afternoon, while stacking food donations, Ryan looked over at his mother helping the children paint pictures, her laughter light and real. He thought to himself how blind he had been, chasing money, chasing approval, when everything that truly mattered had been standing in front of him his whole life. He whispered under his breath, I'd give it all back if I could. Evelyn heard him, but didn't respond. Instead, she said softly, You can't change yesterday, son, but you can still build tomorrow. Ryan started helping more, organizing fundraisers, calling local stores for donations, even driving the bus to pick up kids after school. Everyone began to notice how much he'd changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by humility. When people asked who he was, he always answered, just a volunteer, never mentioning he was her son, because he didn't want forgiveness through title, he wanted it through action. Evelyn watched quietly, seeing glimpses of the boy she once knew, the one who used to run to her after school with scraped knees and big dreams. There were nights she'd wake up praying for his peace, whispering, Lord, give him the strength to become the man I raised him to be, and slowly, her prayers were being answered. But not everyone had forgiven him. Natalie had found out about his visits through social media. She showed up one afternoon, heels clicking on the pavement, anger in her eyes. So this is where you've been hiding? She sneered. Helping your saintly mother? Ryan didn't react. He simply said, I'm not hiding, I'm healing. She laughed bitterly. You could have been rich, Ryan, and now you're here handing out soup? He met her gaze, calm and firm. Money didn't save me, Nat. It destroyed me. She scoffed and turned to Evelyn. You really got him wrapped around your finger again, huh? Evelyn looked at her kindly. No, dear. I just reminded him who he was. Natalie rolled her eyes, stormed off, shouting, You'll regret this! But her words fell flat. Ryan didn't even turn to watch her leave. That chapter of his life had already closed. And for the first time, he felt light, unburdened. Weeks later, the community center held a fundraiser dinner. Ryan worked the entire day preparing tables, decorating, greeting guests. It was the foundation's biggest event yet, and when the crowd gathered, Evelyn took the stage, dressed in a simple navy dress, her voice soft but steady. I once believed my life ended when I lost my home, but now I see. It was just God moving me into a bigger one, a home built not with walls, but with hearts. She smiled at Ryan. And I thank the Lord every day for the chance to rebuild, not with anger, but with love. The crowd applauded, and Ryan felt tears sting his eyes. He didn't deserve her praise, but her love was never about deserving. It was about grace. After the speech, a reporter approached them again, asking for a follow-up story about her journey. Evelyn nodded. You can write what you see, she said gently, but make sure they know this. Wealth means nothing if it costs you your soul. The next morning, the newspaper headline read, "Once betrayed, now blessed, a mother turns pain into purpose." The article told their story, not of greed or loss, but of redemption and renewal. It spread across the state. Donations flooded in, the foundation grew, and children from all over found help through Evelyn's dream. Meanwhile, Ryan found something greater than money. He found calling. He started mentoring teenage boys at the center, teaching them the lessons he learned the hard way. He'd say, "You can't buy peace, son, but you can earn it with truth." His words carried weight because they were born from scars, not theories. One evening, after everyone left, Evelyn and Ryan sat outside the center, the sunset painting the sky gold. She looked at him quietly and said, "You know, I used to pray God would bring you home. I didn't know he'd do it like this." Ryan smiled faintly. "I thought I was saving you, Mama, but you ended up saving me." She laughed softly. That's what mothers do, even when their hearts are broken. For a long while, they sat in silence, watching the sky fade, the world at peace for once. Evelyn reached for his hand, her skin wrinkled but warm. "Promise me something," she said. "When I'm gone, don't let this place die. Let it live through you." Ryan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "I promise, Mama. I'll keep your light burning." And she smiled, because she knew he meant it. For the first time in years, Evelyn's heart was full. Her son was home, not in her house, but in her life. And she realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting the pain, it was about transforming it into love that never fades. Months passed and the seasons began to turn again. The air grew warmer, softer, filled with laughter and music from the community center that now stood as a living monument of forgiveness. The Evelyn Carter Foundation had grown far beyond the small church hall where it began. It was now a bustling heart of hope, a place where lost children found safety, where mothers found strength, and where one broken family had learned to love again. Evelyn, though slower now, came every morning, her cane tapping softly on the tile floor as she greeted everyone by name. "Good morning, sunshine," she'd say to the kids, her eyes always bright, even when her steps weren't. Her presence brought calm like sunlight through stained glass. She had turned pain into purpose so beautifully that even strangers felt it. People often said her kindness had a weight to it, like it came from somewhere deep, somewhere only the heart could reach. Ryan was by her side every day, working harder than ever, organizing drives, expanding programs, speaking at local schools about humility and forgiveness. "I thought success was about owning things," he'd say, standing before rows of students. "But real success is about becoming someone who helps others rise." His words carried power because they came from truth. And every time he spoke, he saw little of his mother in his reflection, her patience, her strength, her quiet grace. Then one afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the center's roof, Evelyn felt a wave of dizziness, her knees trembled, and Ryan rushed to catch her. "Mama!" he cried, guiding her to a chair. She smiled faintly. "I'm all right, baby, just a little tired." But he saw something in her eyes, a distant softness, like someone who was already half in another world. She reached for his hand. "Don't look so scared, child. I'm not leaving you, I'm just going home." He shook his head, tears forming. "Don't say that, Mama. Please, I need you." She smiled weakly. "No, son, you needed saving. Now you need to live." That evening she was taken to the hospital, and though doctors tried, Evelyn's heart, strong for so long, had simply give. In all it could, her final moments were peaceful, her hand resting in Ryan's, her last words barely a whisper. "Keep the light burning, baby. Let love lead you home." When she passed, the world seemed to stop. The town mourned her like family. Candles lined the sidewalks. Flowers covered the community center steps. Children placed drawings of angels on the door. The headline the next morning read, "The Mother of Mercy, Evelyn Carter's light lives forever." Churches held vigils. Local news aired her story, and people across the country donated in her memory. The foundation tripled in size, its name now etched in gold on a plaque above the entrance. The Evelyn Carter Foundation, where love never ends. Ryan stood at her funeral, surrounded by hundreds of faces, families she had helped, children she had fed, lives she had touched. His voice broke as he spoke. "My mother taught me that love doesn't ask for anything back. It just gives and gives until the world remembers what kindness looks like. I took everything from her once, but she gave me something greater in return, grace, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring that gift." After the service, Pastor Michael approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You kept your promise, son," he said softly. Ryan looked at the sky, the clouds glowing in the sunset. "No, Pastor," he whispered. "She did. I'm just carrying it now." Years passed, and the center flourished. Ryan dedicated every bit of his life to it, building shelters, funding scholarships, expanding into other towns. He never sought fame, never spoke about the money. He lived simply, humbly, always under the same motto Evelyn once wrote in her notebook: "Do not let anger lead you, let purpose guide you." Every year on the anniversary of her passing, the community gathered in the park she once loved. They held candles, sang hymns, and shared stories about how Miss Evelyn changed their lives. Children who had grown up through the foundation returned as adults, teachers, doctors, and parents, all saying the same thing: "She saw us when no one else did." One evening, long after everyone had left, Ryan sat alone on the park bench where his mother used to feed the birds. The stars twinkled above like 1,000 silent blessings. He opened her old notebook, now worn and faded, and found her last page, one he had never read before, written in her careful handwriting. "If you ever lose your way, remember, love is the map, kindness is the compass, and faith is the road home." He closed the book gently, smiling through tears, whispering into the night, "I found my way, Mama." A soft breeze brushed his face, and he swore he could almost hear her voice, tender and proud. "I know, baby. I know." And so the story of Evelyn Carter didn't end with her death. It began again in every life she touched, in every hand her son held, in every meal served to a hungry child. Her spirit lived in the laughter echoing through the community hall, in the prayers whispered by mothers at dawn, and in the heart of a man who once lost everything, only to find his soul again through her love. For in the end, the house Ryan stole was just a building, but the home she built, through grace, forgiveness, and faith, was eternal, unbreakable, and alive in every act of goodness that followed.